You must be at least 18 years of age to listen to the following podcast. I am Robert Black, and you are listening to Sexual Heroes. My guest in this episode is Matty Myers. Matty shares a very personal and inspirational tale. As a young adult, he was forced to participate in a gay conversion program. Today, he is thriving and very comfortable in his own skin. Matty Myers, welcome to Sexual Heroes. Thank you for being here today.
Hello. Thank you for having me.
So first, I want to disclose to the listeners that you and I are friends.
Yes.
And maybe a couple of months ago, you mentioned that you had gone through a gay conversion program.
Yeah.
To be honest, I was surprised. I mean, really surprised, because you are so comfortable in your own skin now. At least that's the vibe I get.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. And selfishly, I didn't ask you anymore because I wanted to hear it on this. I wanted it forever available on this podcast.
Oh, yeah.
You were agreeable to that. So thank you very much for sharing your story.
Absolutely. I'm an open book always.
Great. So I'm basically going to just let you start from the beginning and tell your story. When did it all start?
I grew up in a very conservative religious household, like many people out there. Specifically, a Pentecostal Church of God was the name of the denomination that I grew up in Charleston, South Carolina. When I went to college, I actually went to our denomination's college, which was Lee University, Lee, in Tennessee. Was studying music ministry. I was going to be a music minister. That went well. But anyway, I had known, I was fighting internally being gay for a long time, because I had known since I was a little kid. And I think finally things sort of came to a head while I was at college, which I think for at least in my generation, that's when a lot of people finally started to open up about who they were, And it was very much not allowed at that college, still is not today. So I had basically a secret boyfriend, and we broke up. I was very depressed and even suicidal, and went to one of my theater professors about it. And she connected me to campus counseling services, and she also called the dean and reported me. They allowed me to finish that semester, and then they kicked me out, suspended me technically. And the only way I would be allowed to return to finish the one semester I had left till graduation was if I completed an Exodus International ex-gay program and had a letter from my parents, my local church pastor, and from the Exodus International sponsor, stating that I was now straight. And then I could come back and finish my degree. I got home for Christmas break, and my parents wouldn't look me in the eyes because the school had called them and told them. That's how I was outed to my parents. And there was this stranger in our house who was from Exodus International and was there to become my mentor in the program. And that's how it started.
This person from Exodus that was in your home, had he gone through the program, or was he just somebody who was a leader in the program?
He had gone through the program previously, was now married to a woman and had kids. I don't recall if he had the kids with the wife or if she already had kids when they got married. But basically, he always reminded me of now I would say he reminds me of the crocodile hunter, because he always kind of had a safari hat on and always seemed like he was ready to go on safari. It was very handsome.
Sounds a little gay, actually.
Oh, yeah. Pretty much everyone, I would say everyone at the program that I ever interacted with had at some point in time gone through the program themselves, and now their lives were centered around fixing other people because they were now supposedly fixed and were now straight and had no problems. And many of them gay men in the program who'd gone through the program were now married to gay women who had gone through the program. And it all just was very strange all the time. And my program in particular was called Living Waters, was the name of the ministry, they call it, which is Exodus International always operated as a umbrella program with lots of local programs underneath them that sort of like were chapters of Exodus International. And mine in particular was called Living Waters. And it was not just for people trying to conquer their gayness. There was also men there who were cheating on their wives. There were men who thought that they had a porn addiction who were trying to conquer that. And there were pedophiles there. And it was literally any sort of sexual deviation from the norm. This program brought you in and put you all together.
Mm-hmm. Well, I did a little research on the founder and the history of Living Waters. And I saw this list of all the offenses, all the things that you should go through their program for. And I'm going to read the list to the listeners.
Oh my gosh.
Fear, insecurity, marital problems, codependency, pornography, effects of abuse, poor boundaries, sexual addiction or promiscuity, isolation, inability to trust, anger or forgiveness, masturbation, gender identity issues, unwanted same-sex attraction, fantasy, shame, and self-hatred.
Yeah.
Who wouldn't have something on that list?
I mean, well, it's interesting that because one of the things that I specifically remember is that there were men in that program with me, and I was, I think, 20 years old at the time. So not, I mean, I guess technically that's a minor, but not really a minor, but we were mixed in this program. There were specifically men in there struggling with being attracted to children. That's interestingly not on their list.
Right. I noticed that. But
there were definitely several men in that program there that were pedophiles and were mixed in with teenagers and young adults, like they were the same as us because it was the same affliction, apparently.
So you went there?
Yeah. Yeah. It was, if you have ever seen the movie, But I'm a Cheerleader, the things that you see in that movie, as like hilarious as they are in the movie, that's what goes on in real life at these programs.
Wow.
My program was not like a sleepaway camp like that was. And most of them are not, because they don't want you at nighttime around other people with your same afflictions.
Right.
So we had to sign these documents promising that we would never interact with anyone from the program outside of the program, even to the point where when we finished with meetings and you were walking in the parking lot to your cars, you weren't allowed to speak to anyone else in the parking lot. And they would have someone stationed at the door watching to make sure people did not. They didn't want anybody to have anybody else's phone number unless it was your sponsor or your mentor. It was a day camp sort of type situation. We would go to meetings. They would always start with like the large group. So it would be everybody in one room for like a praise and worship moment. And then the leader of the program would do like a sermon, telling us how God hates sex and all sorts of things like that. And then we would break down into our small groups where they tried to mix in the different afflictions. They didn't like group all the people struggling with gay issues together. They would have like one person struggling with gay issues, one person with pornography, one person with pedophilia, one person cheating on their wife. And that would be one small group. Mm-hmm. And that small group would all have the same mentor helping them through the program.
And actually that makes sense because this isn't truly therapeutic. It's correct. It's just about, the idea is to keep you apart from other people like you. Mm-hmm. It's just about Jesus.
Yeah.
It's all about Jesus. And
yeah, it heightens your isolation from other people like you in a program that should be full of people like you, yet you still feel even more isolated than you did before.
Right. And I just want to read this quick thing on the website about the history of it. Our history. It says Andrew Comiskey founded Desert Stream Living Waters Ministries in 1980 when he and his wife Annette responded to their pastor's call to start a healing support group in, listeners, I hope you're sitting down, West Hollywood, California, for men and women seeking Jesus in light of unwanted same-sex attractions. How fucked up.
Yeah, it was crazy. It was crazy. One of the therapies that we had to submit ourselves to, and this has been a very common one. I've heard a lot of other people who went through similar programs talk about it, is we were instructed to always wear rubber bands around our wrist. And anytime we had an impure thought about someone of the same gender, if some like really hot man walked past, or if we saw the cover of GQ magazine and it did something, inside of us, we were to pull those rubber bands as far as we could from our wrist and let go to cause pain.
Did you see Sordid Lives?
No.
Oh, well, listeners who have seen Sordid Lives will get the connection there immediately. Okay. Wow. I've been in situations where I'm in a group setting and I catch somebody's glance and I just feel this connection. Did you have that with anybody as you were going through this?
Not really. At the time, I felt so much shame because of who I was, and I had for years. And now, like, because of the way that this all came out to the public, to my family and everyone at church knew, it was so mortifyingly embarrassing and shameful. And, because I always grew up, I was singing at church and I was in the drama ministry team. And, I was always up front and always participating. And when this all happened, suddenly I was not allowed to be in the choir anymore. I wasn't allowed to sing in the church. I wasn't allowed to do anything except sit in the congregation and listen. And so I was in probably one of the lowest places in my life with shame over who I was and trying to figure out how I get through this,
Okay. So I just want to get the right understanding of your headspace at the time. Mm-hmm. So you were buying this program. I mean, you were trying to work this program.
Yeah, I wanted it to work desperately because the only thing I knew in my life was the church I grew up in. Like it was a bubble. Like I went to public school, but if you would ask most of the people who were my friends and who just knew me when I was in school, they would say I was the Christian kid. I was the one always talking about Jesus. I was the one who only listened to Jesus music, only went to movies if they were PG or below. Everything was about the church and everything was about Jesus. And I was always talking about it to everybody. But basically, I was always talking about it because I couldn't talk about who I really was. I couldn't talk about what I really wanted because those weren't options. I couldn't follow that path because if I did, I lost everything. Mm-hmm. I wouldn't be able to go back to school if this program didn't work. If this program didn't work, my parents were going to kick me out of the house. I wouldn't have a place to live. I mean, I suppose as a 20-year-old man, you would think, looking back, you're like, well, I was 20 years old. Like, I could have found a job. I could have found an apartment. I could have moved on with life. But like at the time, I felt like I was 8 years old, stuck with the world with no choices.
When I came out to my parents, I think I had already asked to see a therapist.
Oh, wow.
Not to try and change, but because, and I was only like 15, I think, 14 or 15, because I knew I was gay and I wanted to figure out a way to come out and make this okay. I was a precocious kid. I mean, I told my rabbi I didn't believe in God and before my bar mitzvah. So,
oh gosh,
don't say that. Oh no. So I was just a different kind of kid. But when I came out to my parents, apparently they had a little talk with the therapist behind my back. Mm-hmm. And I guess because they were footing the bill, I guess he listened to them. And the next time I went back, he started to talk about doing this exercise where I would get my father's Playboy magazine and I was going to find an image and I was going to masturbate to it.
Mm-hmm.
And that was the last time I went to see him. I came home and I was like, we're done. Did they do shit like that, or was it pretty much just focused on Jesus?
Something very similar. We were supposed to, if we allowed ourselves to get caught up in a moment, masturbating or looking at something we shouldn't, we were told to try to envision the image of a woman on top of the thing that actually you were attracted to. So if you were seeing the image of a naked man, and you were attracted to it, you were supposed to try to envision that as a woman instead.
A naked woman?
And then allow yourself to follow through.
Oh, then you could masturbate?
It was mixed. It was mixed because like masturbation was wrong, but it was a potential way that we could turn ourselves around and find some sort of attractive to the feminine within the masculine, which might eventually then lead us back around to just being attracted to the feminine.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Wow.
Talk about fucked up.
Fucked up. Yeah, it's fucked up. So, okay. So this went on for...
I was in the program for, I think about 6 months. Yeah. 6 months, maybe a little, six to 8 months, something like that. Yeah.
Well, you had just one semester left to finish your degree.
I had just the one semester left. I had been sent home, and so didn't go back to Tennessee for the spring semester. And, was started in the Living Waters program over what was the Christmas break and continued through what would have been my final semester at college. I ended up, several things sort of lined up for me to help me escape. One of which was working as an extra in a theater festival in Charleston that they have every summer called Spoleto Festival. And there I met the man who would go on to become my first husband, and I was still going to this program all this time. I started going on dates with him, sleeping with him, not telling anyone at the program that I was doing it.
No surprise there.
Yeah. Even though we were supposed to tell our mentor literally every sexual thought we had, we were supposed to remember and tell our mentor about it. But he made me start to be able to see that there could be life outside of this, that I could accept who I was and it wouldn't be the end of the world, that it might not be easy, but it wouldn't be the end of the world. I auditioned for a role at the Charleston Stage Company, which performs at the Dock Street Theater in downtown Charleston. And I got hired. I got the role. When they called to offer it to me, they said, we'd also like to offer you a position of one of our acting interns for the entire season. So you'll be in most of the shows. You'll get to assistant direct a time or two. You'll get to help teach in our theater program.
Wow.
And we give you like a weekly stipend, because it was an internship, but we also provide you housing. And as soon as they said provide you housing, this light bulb went off in my head and I said, this is my way out.
Mm-hmm.
I have a job that'll pay me enough to pay whatever little bills I had at the age of 20. And I will have a place to live that I won't have to pay for, so I can get out.
Now, where are your parents during all this? Were you in communicate? Well, you were living with them because you only went to this place during the day, and then at night you went home to mom and dad.
They were the roof over my head, as they say, and as long as you're under my roof, it's my rules.
Mm-hmm.
And this was one of their rules, that if I was to live under their house, I had to continue in this program. And so I got this job at the Dock Street Theater and I packed all my stuff up. My parents, were maybe happy that I got this job. I'm not really sure, but I'm sure that they knew what was coming once I got this job. And basically, I went back for the last box at the house, carried it out to the car and said to my parents, they were getting ready for bed. And I told them, I am who I am. God doesn't hate me for it. I need you to get over it if you want to be part of my life. And then turned and left the house and went to my car. Well, not immediately. First of all, my mom said, does the theater know that you're gay? And I said, I don't think that they care. And she said, well, they should know because you shouldn't be teaching children in that theater program. So basically called me a pedophile. And I just didn't even respond. My dad didn't say a word. He was just completely quiet. But I think for my dad, I feel like my story has been sort of reversed of most people. I feel like most people, their mom is better with it than their father, and their father is one who has the harder time, at least among my friend group usually. For me, my father's baby sister was a lesbian. The family rejected her, pushed her away, and she ended up with the wrong crowd and ended up on and off of drugs and ended up dying of an overdose only a couple of months before this happened, before I was leaving. And so I think for my dad, he saw this situation happening and to him, he was seeing the same thing happening over again that happened to his baby sister. And he didn't want me to end up there. So for him, I think it was more difficult because he couldn't just say, this is what we believe, praise Jesus. For him, it was running into this wall. How do I keep him from going down that same path and ending up in that same dark place, but also tell him that that what he's doing is wrong and he's going to hell and, all that stuff. So I think that's why my dad didn't say anything that night. But that's how I escaped. I never went back to the program after that. I basically told them I was leaving the program and they were all like, oh, are you healed? Are you better? And I was like, I'm getting there.
Wait, you said that to who? To
the people at the program
they
at Living
contacted
Waters.
you? Oh, because
Yeah, they wanted to know like what was going on. And I told them, oh, I got this great theater job and I just can't come now because I have to work during the day and blah, blah, blah. And they were like, oh, but you're going to continue your path to healing. And I was like, oh, absolutely. Mm-hmm. It was a lie.
Did you think about telling them to fuck off?
That was a word I didn't use yet. Now it's about every fourth word that I say. But at the time, I grew up in that Christian household where you like say all the fake curse words that mean the same exact thing, but they're one letter is different. So it's okay.
You went back to school.
I did. I did the full year at the internship program at Charleston Stage. And while I was there, I auditioned for NYU for Tisch School of the Arts and got in as a transfer student. And so then I went and finished my degree at NYU.
And just one semester?
Oh, no. When you transfer legally, I think it's federal law, only so many credits can transfer. And so basically everybody who transfers has at least 2.5 years of school left after you transfer. So I graduated. I was supposed to graduate from college originally in the year 2000. And I ended up graduating from NYU in 2004.
Wow. That's wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. It was a long and difficult path. But looking back on it from where I am now, I would say if I had to go through all of that again, I would. Because it's made me who I am today, like the person who's confident just to be who they are around whoever and basically not give a shit, Yeah,
that's the Matty I know. And your parents today, what is that relationship like?
It's an interesting place right now. Things seem to have recently changed. I'm not certain why. My first husband, I'm now divorced from him for years now. We got married when New York State started recognizing out-of-state marriages, but they couldn't be performed in New York State. Mm-hmm. So we went to Boston and got married. And I felt that at the time it seemed like things were getting better with my family. And so I felt that I had to give them the opportunity to come if they wanted to. So I told them about it in advance. And I remember and it wasn't over the phone. It was in person. We were there for a visit.
You and your
Michael, my ex-husband, because they, he was welcome in their home and everything. They just, sleep in separate bedrooms and, all of that. None of that gay stuff in front of us, that kind of stuff. And I told my parents that Michael and I were going to get married in a couple of months, and I would love it if they could come. And my dad's response was, well, you know how we feel about that. What do you want for dinner? How about Chinese? Mm. And then that was the end of the discussion. Then I remember a couple of years later, when the Supreme Court decision came down, legalizing gay marriage nationwide, I was actually with my parents at the time. I was looking at my phone and started just weeping. And my mom was like, what's wrong? Are you okay? What's wrong? And I told her what had happened and what an amazing day it was. And she said, well, just because the Supreme Court says it doesn't mean it's right with God. But now, fast forward, Mm-hmm. So Michael and I ended up getting divorced, and I started life over again. And luckily, this time with a much larger chosen family around me to lift me up and support me and give me a couch to sleep on and all that. In my touring life, I met a guy in LA when my tour was there, fell in love, and, blah, blah, blah. So we're getting married, and next September, blah, blah, blah.
And a good choice. I know him.
Yeah, he's wonderful. He really is.
Do you want to say his name or no?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Dominic Vermeulen is his name. He actually goes by he, they pronouns because he's non-binary. So he or they. But yeah, so next September we're getting married. And my parents were the last people that I told. And I literally told him, I was like, I'm going to text my parents. I don't know what the reaction is going to be, but be prepared because I might cry. I might need a long hug. Their response was very short, and they both responded because I texted them on like a group chat with my mom and dad. And their response was very short, but both of their responses basically were congratulations.
Oh.
Which I literally was like, oh, okay. I was like, I don't really know, but I'll take it. I don't know where that came from, but I'll take it. A couple of months go by, and Dom and I start working on planning things for the wedding and booking a venue and all that sort of stuff. And randomly one day, my dad texts me and says, do y'all have a date for the wedding yet? I think Mom and I are going to come. And I, of course, started crying, didn't know what to do, how to react. And I told Dom, I was like, I'm trying to take this with a grain of salt because I would love to have them there. It would mean the world to me. But the little boy in me is still scared that something will happen and they'll change their mind and not come. So didn't want to get my hopes up. And then I think we're definitely coming. What's the date and where's the closest Wyndham hotel? We want to go ahead and book our hotel. My conservative Pentecostal Christian parents are now the first people to have booked a hotel for my gay wedding.
Wow. What do you think happened?
I have no idea. I really have no clue. I have a few guesses. One could be the person is different. Mm-hmm. Perhaps the things that came out about Michael that ended up ruining our relationship. Maybe they sensed those earlier on. And so maybe it was him they weren't really supportive of me being with.
Do you believe in God?
At times. I don't know if that's an acceptable answer, but sometimes yes, sometimes no. Sometimes I don't know.
Did you ever pray that your parents would come around?
I don't think I ever did. Because I didn't think that would be a possibility ever.
Wow.
Yeah. So I don't know if it's the difference between Dom and Michael, or if it's perhaps them getting a second chance to maybe do the right thing this time and actually be supportive and of the relationship and of the marriage and actually show up, or if it's perhaps age softening their views. I mean, I know they're still conservative. I know they're still Republican. Perhaps they're not quite as hard-lined as they used to be, or perhaps they're not as dug into needing to be the appearance of it anymore. But I really don't know.
I don't remember you mentioning a brother or sister.
I do have an older brother. He's 9 years older than me. He's heterosexual, married. That fell apart, probably a decade or more ago now.
Yeah. So you are in a happy place today.
Very much so. Very much so.
What could be better?
Work could start back soon. Touring is coming back. I'm very excited.
Yeah. You want to say what you do?
Oh, yeah. I work on Broadway national tours. So I travel all over the U.S. and Canada when theater exists. And I work backstage with the wardrobe, with the costumes. I travel with the show to help maintain the costumes and help to train the locals that we hire in every city to actually execute all of the costume changes and oversee that and manage all of that process. And I currently tour with a show called Dear Evan Hansen, if you know it, which is, and you can feel free to not bleep that. Which a lot of people know. It deals with social media and bullying online and depression and suicide and anxiety, all sorts of like really important, pertinent messages right now. And so it will be wonderful to be back on the road with that show, spreading some really good messages of awareness and reaching out to each other. It'll be good to have that back again.
And I think your talk today is going to inspire a lot of people, and a lot of people will be able to relate.
Yeah, it's surprising actually how many people were put through some form of ex-gay program, even if it wasn't an official program. I can recall constantly, once my church knew, I can't tell you how many times they tried to cast the demon out of me, because that was what they also thought was the problem. It wasn't just me being a deviant. There was apparently a demon causing it. So,
any last thoughts you want to share with the Sexual Heroes listeners?
Oh my gosh.
You are a sexual hero.
I just say, be you. Find out who you are and be that authentic self. Fuck the world. Just be who you are. If everyone would just be who they are, if they want to be on the inside, if everybody was that on the outside, like literally there would be no more problems in the world.
Right. I absolutely agree with that. Matty, thank you very much for being on Sexual Heroes today.
Thank you so much. It was an honor.
For information with links about a guest on Sexual Heroes, visit the show notes. And please be sure to follow me on Twitter @RobertBlackXXX. Thanks for listening.